During easier times, this was often my pew. It was a place where I played and prayed, which most times happened simultaneously. It was also a place at benches just like this where I spent hours and hours practicing and trying to improve my musicianship. Here at All Saints, I was able to help lead people in song downstairs during times of joy and during times of sadness. I was able to encourage my friends upstairs to express themselves in artistic ways. When we would hit our stride, we were able to revel in the beauty of holiness, to appreciate how the individual could become part of some sort of great thing, a divine tapestry. Since we were living face to face then, we could value not just the sound that we were making together, but appreciate the sight of smiles on our friends' faces. Who knew that those experiences would now be looked back upon with a wistfulness, with a yearning, and great appreciation for what was? But as everyone is aware, everything changed in the blink of an eye. I have been a working church musician since 2002, not counting earlier internships during college. For the most part, over the years, I had developed a routine and planning that served me well. That's because, in general, I knew what was coming, thanks to things like a calendar and the lectionary. I'm not going to be Pollyanna about what happened with the pandemic. It's like the organ bench had been pulled right out from under me. Instead, after the stay-at-home order, my pew has become a dining room chair at home. It's there at my computer where I now see those faces as though through a looking glass, as it were. Not face to face, but now connected by electrons. Nowadays, I schedule recordings with clergy and lay leaders to create worship videos that, for now, take the place of in-person worship. And there is very little music being made right now. When I record singers, I do so at a great distance to follow physical distancing protocols. I have learned and continue to learn how to create videos of multiple musicians at once, since recording in the same room at the same time isn't safe now. While I'm grateful for this technology, it can be tedious and time-consuming. But everything changed in the blink of an eye. Now, as maybe less of you may be aware, way back in 2019, before we even heard the letters COVID arranged in that particular order, I was making plans to go on sabbatical this summer, 2020. When it became clear that I wouldn't be able to travel to Europe because of the virus, I decided to take half of my sabbatical in 2020 so that I could take a break from the stresses of all the sudden adaptations that work for the church had required. I had set my hope of spending the other half of my sabbatical in Europe in 2021, when hopefully Americans can travel again. But just as my half sabbatical started in June, everything changed again in the blink of an eye. The first week, my parents' full house basement flooded with about 2 to 3 inches of groundwater. Their full house basement contained 50 years of flotsam and jetsam. This required going through each item, determining what was important enough to save, what needed to be donated, and what was going to go to the dumpster. This was an emotional experience for my parents, to have to come to terms with what must be done with belongings that they had kept of their deceased son and other family members, as well as remnants that reminded them of when they were younger and healthier. The very next week, my mother's health took a turn. To make a long story shorter, she developed a staph infection in her knee, requiring her to have her knee implant taken out and to receive intravenous antibiotics every 8 hours for 6 to 8 weeks. During this time of COVID, it was absolutely not an option for her to go to any rehab facility. So my sister and I have been taking care of her infusions at their home. Unfortunately, my father's health has also declined more rapidly during this time, in the blink of an eye. This is because his brain doesn't adapt well to quick changes. These stresses have affected his cognition, which in turn affects every other aspect of his life. So, these past 6 weeks, I've had a lot of time to think. At first, I thought I was going to be given this sabbatical as a chance to take a break from the stresses of figuring out how to find my way in the COVID wilderness, towards bringing people together, striving to find a way to connect folks to the sacred in new and unusual ways. But then, in the blink of an eye, I was given that gift of time instead to be there for my mom, dad, and sister. In some way, some small way, I was prepared for the upheaval of my mom's illness because I had learned that I could cope with my way of church work being turned upside down already. During these past 6 weeks, there have been kernels of light where I've heard stories connected to some relic of the past uncovered during the basement cleanup. There have been recollections from my childhood that I had forgotten, like how after about 35 years, seeing my Winnie the Pooh toy again and hearing the music box play inside made me teary because it brought the rush of memories of the comfort that Winnie had given me when I was a little boy. I've also had the opportunity to sit with my parents for longer stretches of time, hearing stories for the first time. Stories about their courtship, first years in marriage, planning the building of the house that we were cleaning up. These snapshots, these memories, these moments to reflect. I see now that they are all part of why I was to take the sabbatical. I just had to get on this side of it to really know that. So, thank you all, saints, for giving the opportunity to sit down with my parents, and most importantly, listen.